house, bringing you news, reviews, and interviews. And as you can see, family, we have a guest, none other than our brother Ras Nkrabia. Welcome, my brother. How are you doing?
Yes, greetings, Empress. It's a pleasure to be with you again. I'm doing fine. I'm doing wonderful.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you back in the house. So we're going to be having a little bit of a discussion about three headline stories. One, a child in the UK who was strip searched in school by racist police officers. Secondly, we're going to look at the Ukraine-Russia war. And thirdly, we're going to be considering whether we think Africa needs to form strategic military alliances, and if so, who with? So keep it locked, because we're going to be unpacking those stories right now. So the first story that I'd like us to kick off with today, my brother, is the case in the UK of a young black schoolgirl who was strip searched by Met police officers in a London school because her teachers thought that they smelt cannabis on her. So what did they do? They called the police. The police came in and decided to strip search this young 15-year-old schoolgirl while she was on her period, and even made her remove her pad. You know, obviously, with something like this happening and it coming to our attention, there is absolute outrage amongst the Black community, understandably so. We feel that she has been treated in this way because she was Black, she's an African child, and, you know, it's appalling. It's been said that it's a sexual abuse, serious mistreatment of this young child. She was racially stereotyped by her teachers, who thought that they'd smelled cannabis on her, and that she'd been taking drugs. Really awful treatment. And then calling the police while she was taking her exams, removed her, you know, from the exam room, and then, you know, sent her back in afterwards as if she's supposed to then be in the right frame of mind to concentrate on her exams. Now, my brother, I know that you have been in the forefront yourself in a situation where your young son was not being admitted into school because of his locks, and you had to fight the system as a result of that. So you know only too well what it's like to have your beloved child, you know, being singled out in a particular way. And this case here, what are your thoughts on this case, my brother?
Yes, give thanks, Empress. It's interesting that an issue like this came up, because we had a similar situation at the school, but it was just verbally mentioned more than anything else, right? What they said was that the children may come to the school and encourage other children to use marijuana. So they were actually doing the same thing by saying that the children will take marijuana to school, right? In this case, it's that they were actually forced and violate child rights by searching her in that manner in which they did. And it has even gone much further than even in my case, because, you know, the physical and bodily intrusion and all of that is also another issue that needs to be looked at. You know? Racism is just such a decadent and corrupted system that you can expect anything from these people, anything, because they don't have any morals. They already have a certain level of hatred and total disregard for African people, that they feel they have the rights to do basically anything. You know, I think it's a situation wherein the parents and the community should band together and seriously take a strong legal action against the school and against the police, right? Because this is gross violation.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And they should not go scotch-free where this is concerned. What I'm seeing across the world right now is that there are a lot of issues like this, and issues that used to happen similar to this. And over a period of time, we tend to not follow through, and follow on with the issue to ensure that justice is done. Time when we're supposed to be able to ensure that justice is done in every single situation. If you notice the imposter Jews, they will go and dig up the whole German person who they claim have something to do with their Holocaust. If the person is dying or even in the grave, they'll dig them up and try them. That's the same approach you have to use.
Absolutely.
Because the atrocities are just too much and someone have to pay and they cannot go scot-free. We should never allow any of these people to go scot-free with any other violation against us. Right? All historical legacy is there in terms of all of the violations, etc. That we have so much that we can use against them in an international court of law. Right? And we're not even going into slavery and all of that coming up through the Middle Passage, etc. Just even presently, look at what happened to that little girl. Right? It just goes to show that racism wherever throughout the world is basically the same. Look what happened in Ukraine. Right? One would never expect a situation like that. That level of hatred and dislike for someone would raise its ugly head. Yeah, so it is something that is very serious. I would need to really, make a sustained advocacy and action, legally and otherwise. As Malcolm X would say, any means necessary. Any means necessary to get our justice, we have to do it.
Absolutely. Yes. The matter has even been picked up by one of our MPs as it goes. Let me just share the screen here so that you can see the letter from Diane Abbott. Diane Abbott is an African MP here in the divided kingdom. And as you can see, she's actually written to the Detective Chief Superintendent, Commander at Hackney and Tower Hamlets Police Station. And in her letter, she has also expressed her, deep concern about what she's saying is an entirely inappropriate strip search of the child. And she said that this search was degrading, humiliating, and traumatic for the child. And you know what, my brother? I'm traumatized by it as well. I feel traumatized by it. The entire community feels traumatized, by what we've just read that this poor child had to go through. The MP, Diane Abbott, is saying that she was also disgusted to hear about it as well, and that it constitutes what she said. What did she say it constitutes? Right, that something like this could have happened to one of her constituents. So, she said that there's an investigation going on, but she's certainly saying that she wants to follow it up as well. And there was a report done into it, and racism, was actually cited in the report as a factor, because, we're saying, had this been a white child, they would not have treated her in this way. And then it was even suggested that, we thought she was older than she looks. Really, the child was in school.
Do anything with
she was in school. They didn't stop her out of school. So that one just doesn't wash right here, And we've got all these paedophiles that we're hearing about in the police force and all these sexual perverts. How do we know that, the couple involved in strip searching that child isn't on that list of perverts that we've been hearing about? So we have every right as a community to be outraged about this. And like you say, we can't let it drop. I'm sure the lawyers are already on the case on this. And also, I did read in the newspaper some of the comments from Child Q herself. And from my reading of her comments, she's obviously a very bright and a very intelligent young African child. And if racism is at play, which it says, was a factor here, then we know only too well that that the education system, with its institutionalized racism and discrimination against our children, do either deliberately or inadvertently prevent our children, from succeeding. They took this child out of the exam that she was sitting. Obviously, that's going to impact on her grades.
Of course, clearly. And it's not an accident. It was calculated and planned to have that level of disruption,
Certainly.
total disregard and disrespect. So
It's
that negative mindset of racism that they constantly perpetuating in every sphere of life. That's one aspect of it. And it's something that we have been going through for so many generations. But it's time for us to stand up to it and address these issues and give it our best shot in terms of an advocacy that will speak volume.
Absolutely. So family, there's a standard letter. If you want to express your deep concerns about this particular matter, email me. I will send you a copy of the standard letter. There's also a petition that's been circulated. Make sure you find that petition and sign it yourself. I'll put the link to the petition under this video as well. Thank you for your thoughts and comments on that, Ras and Rabia. Okay, we're going to go on to our second topic now, which is about the war in Ukraine. And you sent me a video that you'd like me to play. It's about 3 minutes long, and it is packed with a lot of well-researched information. So let me just find that video, share the screen, and play the video, and then we'll hear your thoughts and comments on that, my brother. Okay, here we go.
How many countries has America invaded since the Second World War? America has been in 19 wars since World War II. The death toll from modern American wars killed in the name of freedom is over 20 million and counting. They have overthrown 36 governments, attempted to assassinate over 50 foreign leaders, and dropped bombs on people in over 30 countries. Syria was the latest of 14 countries in the Islamic world that US forces have invaded, occupied, or bombed. But you believe your American media when they say Putin is a crazy warmongering dictator. Is your self-righteous indignation based on an understanding of basic history, or just triggered by the next new bandwagon that is trending on mainstream media? 90% of these deaths are ordinary men, women, and children. They started the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War. In the last 60 years or so, the list of countries the US invaded includes Bosnia, Cambodia, the Congo, Cuba, El Salvador, Guatemala, Indonesia. There's been wars in Iraq, wars in Afghanistan, wars in Syria, Central America. They are the global bullies, destroying any country in the name of democracy and human rights. But the intention has always been to strip the nation of its resources and enrich their military-industrial complex. Now, what about Britain? Did you know that there are only 22 countries in the world that the UK have not invaded or helped in starting a war? The hypocrisy of the West is an abomination. Where was the sanctimonious outrage when Israeli armed forces bombed and shot Palestinian children armed with nothing but stones? Where was the sense of injustice when George Bush and Tony Blair invaded Iraq? Even after the UN weapons inspector Hans Blix visited Iraq and confirmed that there were no weapons of mass destruction. What a coincidence that Mr. Blix was found dead from suicide. Do any of you actually know Ukraine is not even a sovereign country? The state of Ukraine does not exist. If people just stopped and educated themselves before flinging themselves into a frenzy of indignant theatrics all over social media, they would discover that in 2014, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon stated that since December 1991, Ukraine has not registered its borders as an independent country. Ukraine is still under the territory of Russia, and everything that happens in this area is in fact an internal matter of Russia. And as far as Putin is concerned, there is no invasion. But now suddenly you're all Ukrainian. You all stand with George Soros, Hillary Clinton, and Marina Abramovich. Everyone is so used to instant news, like instant coffee and instant noodles or instant text messages, you don't have the patience to step back, to query the historical context of present-day events, to educate yourself on an intricate and complicated ancient conflict. So my question is, when everyone starts shouting on the rooftops that today they stand with Ukraine, do they realize that they're actually standing with Russia?
Okay. Wow.
It's very interesting.
It is indeed. It is indeed a very interesting perspective, one that you don't hear on the mainstream.
Right.
And
right.
those statistics regarding the number of wars that the US and the UK have actually started is just shocking. It's almost unbelievable.
It is. And she didn't even do a quarter of what they have done in the world. She didn't even mention a quarter of all the atrocities and the wars that they have, created. It's terrible. I mean, when you don't take time to actually do your research and study the issues well, you won't be able to understand the full analysis of what is happening. And this clearly shows that Russia had more than a right to intervene. As far as I'm concerned, they should have intervened long ago, and even in a more forceful manner, because there it is your territory. Ukraine is a Russian territory, right? Even though the separation was there for some time now and they have their difficulties or whatever, it's an internal issue, right? And what the United States did is that they capitalized on that internal issue that was going on and to try and build a strong NATO force in that country to be able to attack Russia. So who would tolerate something like that? And certainly the United States wouldn't have tolerated anything like that.
Absolutely not.
But it goes to show the kind of mentality is that they are very lawless. They don't care about anyone or anything in the world. They always want to have their own way. But the fact that Russia was able to stand up to them is a clear example that until we begin to start to resist, putting up resistance, we are not going to get anywhere. And I use this in relation to Africa, right? Where all these different superpowers or countries with a certain amount of wealth and whatever, it's involved in Africa in so many different ways, not just economically, not just politically, not just military-wise, but in every way as much as possible. And because of the fact that there's such a great divide and separation on the African continent, it is easy for them to operate, right? So the action of Russia is something that I really applaud. And I feel like as an African, we must take sides in these wars. And the reason why I'm saying that we must take sides is that we are in a world right now where there is two forces that is actually operating, right? There is socialism or communism, and there's capitalism, right? We have to find our way in between them and to have the best leverage possible with the one that can give you greater options to operate and to empower yourself. Because these alliances is all about empowerment, economically, financially, and otherwise. So we have to think strategically and actually work out a way to strengthen the African continent in moving forward in that military position that is necessary to give us the collective security that we need. Clearly, we saw that there was a lot of problems going on with Ukraine in so many different levels, in terms of crime, the economy, the politics, so many different issues that was going on there. However, they would try to make it look like it was a country that has nothing but pure saints. Right? All because of the fact that they want to demonize Putin and to have their way.
Right.
But we are so happy that there are forces on the ground who had a lot of inside information to actually enlighten the outside world in terms of what is going on there, right? Because it is right now, the United States has only used the Ukraine to try and get their way, and they still didn't give it any real strong strategic military support for it to defend itself. So it's really a sacrifice made of this country, right? And it's a lesson, that's all I have to say. It's a lesson for all the other African countries to recognize that Africa needs to stand on its own. It needs to take its own decision where these forces are concerned. The United States have been in Africa for so many years, doing so many things and getting away with it. And it's time for the leaders to wake up and stand up and act serious the way these things is concerned. The relationship between Africa and Russia goes way back, right? And if you study the history of that relationship, you will see a clear difference between the United States and Russia in terms of its international relation with Africa, right? And it's for the African to determine where we want African countries to go, or want a continent to go, and make your demands based on that and do your negotiations based on that. You know, we shouldn't be allowing ourselves to become just victims of any of these two superpowers. Right? And we have to find one of them that we can align with so that we can empower ourselves as we go along.
Right. So your position is that, you know, the African continent needs to consider who it wants to have as its military and political alliance, who it wants to draw alliances with. And from that standpoint, then as a continent, be quite strategic in the way that we function with the other superpowers of the world. So you
Yes,
think we need a strategic standpoint?
Yes, it's very important because we cannot go it alone. And if you realize that in this world, there's no one country that is going it alone. We have some kind of relationship and allies that we do so many things with. If it's not food, it is in some levels of industrial work. It's not finances, it's politics, whatever the case is. You know, you take an issue like what's happening in the UN sometimes. Sometimes just allies in the UN can make a major difference for the things that Africa trying to get done. But usually in those forums, the African countries tend to side with the West rather than siding with Africa. Yeah.
Yeah. So first and foremost, agree. First and foremost, Africa needs to stand together.
Yes.
And vote on bloc.
Exactly.
And, you know, kind of analyze what's in its best interest and then, you know, vote accordingly. So, you know, some allies on a military level might be different from some economic allies, some industrial allies.
That's
We
right.
hear you on that. But Africa really needs to start thinking about what is in its own best interest and stand together as a bloc. That's
and it's very important because of the fact that we have the balkanization of Africa, the fragmentation of all these African countries, these small nation states that cannot even stand on their own, right? Because of that, the West have been able to manipulate.
That's right.
Right, and create a further division on the continent and make it very difficult for these leaders to even see the way in terms of as a continent and moving forward. That is why it's important for us to side with one. Because if you side with one, then you will see your way clear. Whatever battle that you have to fight with that one from a political and economic level, it's best to fight that battle with that one rather than you get caught in between the both of them and then nothing comes out of it at the end of the day because you are not making a clear decision and a clear position. Because none of these countries are going to actually allow you full reign without building strong partnership. So it's a give and take kind of situation. And as I said, it's a strategic alliance. You have to strategically work it out as regards to this kind of arrangement, this kind of engagement, so that you get the best for Africa. Absolutely. But it has to be done. This fragmented, approach. It's not doing any good for Africa. It's doing more bad. And they recognize that, so they're able to come in between and manipulate and divide and conquer.
We hear you on that. So yes, Africa, wake up, time to start thinking strategically, forming alliances, make your decisions about those alliances and stick with it. And obviously it has to be what's in the best interest of Africa, its people, and access to its resources. Thanks for sharing your views on that. Third topic for discussion is the one around the biological weapon laboratories that have been found in Ukraine. Russia has exposed the fact that Ukraine has been the center of biological weapons making. And apparently they were in the process of making more biological weapons to create more pandemics.
That's right.
So, this war is really exposing the extent to which, America was actually at the forefront of working with Ukraine and creating financing the creation of these really dangerous biological viruses. which is illegal. So my brother, what are your views and thoughts on all of this research activity that the US has been involved in leading and financing in Ukraine?
Well, as we know already that the United States is very lawless, we can go to the UN and see all of the violation, international treaties and agreements that they have, broken along with Israel, right? So they have no regard for humanity. They have no regard for the environment, right? So it's not surprising to hear that they were actually doing that in that country. And that's one of the reasons why they got so disturbed, because they recognized that all of this would be unveiled to the world once Putin gets inside there, right? It's definitely a massive exposure of the evil atrocities that they had in store in that country. I am very happy that this exposure happened at this particular time, because as I said before, they were trying to make Ukraine look like some kind of saint or whatever the case is. And here comes Russia, this big bully, to murder this child, right? But now all these things is coming out and we are seeing it clearly. We just had a situation with the COVID, right? That whole fake lies and whatever you call it, right? That they put on the world and create such economic burden, cause so many lives to go down the drain and cause so many people to be sick, right? So just another one of their nefarious activities that is being exposed. And there's more to come. I'm not going to hear the end of this here.
There is more, my brother. Look here. This Zao is saying that the US Department of Defense controls 336 biological laboratories in 30 countries.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on what the implications of this are for Africa? We've had Ebola, we've had HIV, AIDS, and Zika, and all other sorts of diseases which has come from green monkeys and all kind of nonsense scenarios that have been created, which has killed millions of people.
Of course.
And we're only too aware of the Dr. Death's scenario as well in South Africa, and all of the awful diseases that he was involved in creating and injecting Africans with in South Africa. And so when we're talking about, this exposure is very, very serious indeed.
It is. And the United States, they have what is called the AFRICOM. Right? That is the military high command that they have been using to build these different military bases in the African continent. And so far, we have been able to identify over 29 military bases on the African continent. Right? 29 military bases on the African continent. 29. Wow.
Yeah. And this is just what? Just American?
Yeah, that's just America, because France has about 10.
Right, there we go.
Right? And they all work together. So you're talking about what? That's almost 40 right there, between just the both of them. Right? And these are the ones that has been uncovered. Right? So we know that it's probably more than that.
Yes.
Right? And that is kind of undermining of people's sovereignty. That the United States and the UK, will constantly perpetuating. And at the same time, when you try to put up any kind of resistance, you become terrorists, you become this, you become that. Right? But we have no other choice than to resist it.
Absolutely. Right? What do you think the African governments ought to be saying about this and doing about this? Because clearly some of those, as you've just said, 336 biological laboratories are on the continent as well.
Yes.
So this is illegal. What do you think the African government's position ought to be as individual and as a collective in response to this exposure? Because I'm not hearing an outcry from them. And I'm very, very concerned because of Ebola, because of the history with AIDS.
It's a very terrible situation, Empress, because most of these leaders, they are all in bed with the West, right? The West didn't just come in here overnight, just like that, and position themselves there. It's a gradual process along with all of these leaders over time, right? And the ones that are in power today, in most cases, they are for the West. If you look at how they voted when this Russian issue came up, they're basically saying that they're supporting the West in that particular issue, right? And at a time like now, when everything is very, very crystal clear, and we have seen all the atrocities of the United States of America all over the world, just like Israel, how could you as an African leader today vacillate when it comes to making a decision in the UN? It is very crystal clear, right? So what I think should really happen really is more that the youth need to start thinking in terms of where they put their vote and who they put their votes with, right? They have to start looking at it from the standpoint of issues. Vote where your issues are concerned that is in your own best interest. They need to start looking from that level wherein they don't put these leaders in power, because we are the same ones that put them there in power. So we have to be more analytical as regards to the politics that runs the world and the politics that runs the domestic situation as well, and make our decisions based from there. So it's about a level of consciousness and a political will to take these kind of actions to prevent these leaders from having those positions, because it is as a fact of them having those positions that they are able to abuse it.
Absolutely. It's time to change, because
exactly.
the current political system just doesn't work in Africa.
No.
You know, on one of my other shows with our brother Rasul, he was talking about the cost of running for Parliament, and how that has been put outside of the reach of someone who might have a heart for the people, because you need millions now to be able to run for Parliament, and you know, it's just financially not achievable. So you know, the big money people come in with their millions and they buy their politicians or their respective MP, and of course, you know, once they're selected, they're expected to work for them. So that system doesn't work in Africa. And, you know, I would go as far as saying it's time to look at a new political structure and a new political system that works for the people. Because, you know, if we have, you know, a leader that is easily manipulated, then the entire country and all the people of the country suffer as a result. That is not a system that works in Africa. Well, my brother, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and for giving your thoughts, views and opinions with me on some of those important news stories that are headlining the news at the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much once more.
More love, more power, more voodoo.
Thanks.
Bye for now.